Well, there was lots of public interest in a transportation meeting held this week in Hillsborough County. More than 150 people turned out for a public forum at the county center. The crowd was comprised of two groups, mainly those who want more mass transit in the county. That group made up the majority, and those who don't want to fund any more public transit because they say it's a waste of taxpayer money. All right, Sharon, you were there. Did I get that right? I mean, because you're part of the group that's opposed, I think, to light rail. Are you blanket opposed to more spending on mass transit?
I'd like to point that out, and I'm glad that you actually call this transportation, because that's what that policy group is actually looking at, is transportation solutions. And first of all, our roads, you know, we have to be maintaining our existing infrastructure. So that needs to happen. But as far as, and there's private sector solutions as well. So when transportation is encompassing of many elements, but as far as the mass transit, we would like to see common sense, fiscally responsible, cost-effective transit. And we've got great opportunity here in Hillsborough County because we just launched the Metro Rapids. And it's looking successful. It not only are people riding it and liking it, but they're actually helping the traffic flow down Nebraska Avenue because it doesn't stop as much. So again, I think that, you know, as Hillsborough County, as this committee moves forward, I will say I do have some concerns regarding the committee and how it's being facilitated. But we'll definitely be watching it. But I think we've got some good opportunities here from the private sector if we just reduce some of the regulations. We had Uber, the car sharing company that, you know, ran out last year. We'd love for them to come back. Just at that meeting was someone from the Tampa bike share company. You know, that could be used downtown.
Sure. Could I ask you about light rail though? Would the Tea Party consider light rail in Hillsborough County at this point in history?
Well, in 2010 we actually had a formal vote, and the voters in the county said no. At this point in time, again, I do not see that as being the most cost-effective way to improve our mass transit options in the time frames. I mean, we need something now. That's what they keep telling us, right? We can improve our bus service, whether it's the spine, you know, building out the bus rapid transit with the feeder buses, and looking at private sector a lot faster. And we built the Metro Rapids 1/60th the cost of what that light rail would have been.
Mitch, what was your take? Or Wayne, go ahead.
I was going to say, are we missing when we talk about the transit and the bus system? And it's great that that's a success, because I've actually taken the bus up to my work at USF from my house, and you know, I would love the bus system to work really well. But aren't we really talking about the big thing in the room is the transportation improvements that are needed, mostly out in the county. The voters turned down when they were also turning down the light rail. And the fact that, in a way, it seems like this committee is looking at how to orderly have the horses leave the barn a decade after we've left the barn door open. We need to have a conversation about how we're going to grow. Are we going to have more urban density? We're going to talk a little bit later. We talked before the show about the Riverwalk and, you know, growth along there. Doesn't that conversation go hand in hand before you decide where you spend your transportation dollars, or is this committee really just looking at stopgap things for now and not really looking 20, 30 years down the road?
Well, you're right. The Hillsborough County Commission did decide to tie economic development to transportation. And where that goes, you know, we're not exactly sure, because what came out of the EPSC last year, the Economic Prosperity Stakeholders Committee, was looking at these economic development areas. But nothing has happened there, you know. So how that's actually going to get tied together is going to be interesting. But there again, it could be, you know, multiple solutions in the transportation, you know, area if they move forward with even those EDAs.
Mitch, at that meeting on Tuesday, there were the skeptics, including Sharon and members of the Tea Party. They were there, but also a pretty large group of people that wanted more transportation options.
Yeah, there was more of those folks there, and they weren't happy because the stakeholders weren't there, but I'm told that they were told, I mean, the county commissioners weren't there, that they were told by county staff not to be there because this was to be a meeting of the public, what the public have to say, what they're going to say. Having said that, At some point, we're going to have to talk about light rail, though. I mean, and not talk about it, but even bring it back. I know Sharon, is steadfast in her opinion that it was rejected 3 years ago. It was supported in Tampa, and the MPO has studies that show that it has more support now than it did back then. Hillsborough County Commissioners are gun shy now. They're going to wait for, I guess, for Pinellas to do their thing next year. But it's going to come down to 4 county commissioners having the guts to go ahead and wanting to move ahead with this, and that's not the case right now. Interesting. The CEOs were there at that last meeting there, and they were all, we need to have this for economic growth and to bring young people in here and the like. But that's not who puts pressure on the county commission. It's the development community, and they're the ones that have the dollars here that fund these county commission races, and they don't really care about this as much as the CEOs do.
Yeah, and that's because their interest.
Sprawl.
Well, their interest is getting the roads built out to all of the sprawling developments that they made over the past 10 years and that are still sitting out there waiting to be built once the economy here comes back enough. And so they have all these unmet needs that the county didn't prepare for and didn't get in that referendum. They have those unmet needs. The city, majority of folks in the city probably want to see a different transit solution. A political path between all of those interests with the money from developers that fuel things, I don't know how you get there from here.
Well, the problem is though, for light rail systems, for example, it takes the seed capital money comes from the federal dollars, and those federal dollars are shrinking. I mean, even with the second line that just ground broke in Charlotte, half of that was federal dollars, and even they acknowledge that's probably the last big deal like that from the feds could be in the country.
Nadine, let me ask you, it looks like Pinellas County is moving towards a referendum next year on light rail. And at least the way I'm reading it, it's going ahead. I mean, there's not that many roadblocks before it gets on the ballot in November of 2014. But I'm wondering, how do you build a rail system in Pinellas County without linking it up to something similar in Hillsborough County? If you've got a train going out to the airport, for instance, from St. Pete, shouldn't that train gauge also match what's being built in Hillsborough County?
Well, I mean, I think that Wayne's right. The challenge here is to have a longer horizon for solutions, not stopgap solutions. And, I think the groundswell of people who expect to have a better transportation system, who expect to live in a place that has light rail, is just going to increase. I mean, all of these things, the economy coming back, the same people who want to see a bolder vision for St. Petersburg, they expect to have these things. And I think I think we will get there, and the question is, how long will impediments be put in the way? But we're going to get there.
Okay.